Hey, all my Crimsonites, and welcome to the Crimson Cure channel, where we embrace our femininity, increase our womanly values, and celebrate our brothers. So join me on our feminine journey to learn, heal, and grow. Hey there, my Crimsonites, and welcome to the Crimson Cure channel. I'm your hostess, femininity coach, and author of the Crimson Cure, and this is my perspective. So we got a clip. This clip is actually CGA. Shout out to Coach Greg Adams and his content. This is one of his shorts, and he says something very interesting in it, something that I have touched on before. And so we're not going to waste time. We're going to let him cook. And I'm probably going to run this twice so that you can really hear it. And here we go.
There's no God in marriage in the United States. So that's kind of misleading. And people will find that out if your marriage is destroyed. You go back to your pastor and you say, hey, my marriage is being destroyed. He has no power over that because it is a state agreement. Most people on the West Coast, many people in the East Midwest, there's no God in marriage. So
we break that down. What do you mean that there's no God in marriage?
So people get married. One of the things that they will do is they will seek counsel of the church. And then as such, the guys will give them guidance and it will be biblical principle. However, they will say we can't do anything until you sign this state-sponsored agreement with family law context. All right. They're not going to have a Bible in there. They're not going to have a Bible in that divorce court. The judge is not going to ask you, do you like God? I don't mean to offend you. There's no God in marriage in the United States. So that's kind of misleading. And people will find that out if your marriage is destroyed. You go back to your pastor and you say, hey, my marriage is being destroyed. He has no power over that because it is a state agreement. Most people on the West Coast, many people in the East Midwest, there's no God in marriage. So
we break that down. What do you mean that there's no God in marriage?
So people get married. One of the things that they will do is they will seek counsel of the church. And then as such, the guys will give them guidance and it will be biblical principle. However, they will say we can't do anything until you sign this state-sponsored agreement with family law context. All right. They're not going to have a Bible in there. They're not going to have a Bible in that divorce court. The judge is not going to ask you, do you like God?
Okay. So you heard what the good brother had to say. Once again, shout out to Coach Greg Adams. He's absolutely 100% correct. In today's society, American society, the concept of marriage has been so intrinsically tied to the state. And the concept of a marriage license being the only thing that actually validates a marriage and says that you're married. So entrenched is that concept that even people who are more on the religious side and to a certain extent understand that marriage is actually a spiritual institution, marriage itself, like originally, the original concept is an institution introduced by the Creator. Even though there are people who, are deeply religious and will say, that this is a spiritual thing, they themselves still don't believe that a marriage is a marriage until the state says you're married. So there is no stock placed in the actual religious ceremony of the marriage. That, in a lot of people's eyes, is just that. It's just a ceremony. It's just pomp and show. It's just dress up. And that the actual marriage does not occur unless and until you get a state marriage license. And I want people to ask themselves, a marriage license issued by the state, why does that translate or have anything to do with the very personal decision of two people deciding that they're going to live their lives together. See, it's the power that so-called was taken away from God, quote unquote. Mankind, people in this society, we quote unquote took the power away from God and gave it to the state. Because both in the Bible and the Quran, there are rule guidelines of marriage and what marriage should be. And both of these books predate America by thousands of years. Okay? So the concept is old, marriages. And so if God has guidelines for a marriage already, where does the state come in with their guidelines for your marriage? Because when you think about it, the state doesn't care what happens in your household. The only thing the state care about is how taxes are filed. The state cares about how you can be taxed and charged for being together. So insurances, medical insurances, life insurances, all of these types of things, these institutions, these organizations want to know if you're married so that they can know how much to charge you and that they can know how much to, you understand? It's a business for them. Divorce is a business for them. Because when you go into a court, when you go into divorce court, they don't try to arbitrate the marriage for you. When you head into an American divorce court, they just simply start going through the process and emotions of granting the divorce. They don't seek counsel for you. They don't arbitrate between the two people. They don't say, okay, go get your family. You go get some family members that you trust, people that you trust out of the community. We're going to talk about it and we're going to try to get your marriage on track. The state has nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, they prefer that you become divorced because whether you together or not, the state is going to make its money off of you either together as a household or they're going to make their money off of you split as a family. Either way, the state is going to have its piece of you, which is where that license comes from. Because they want to register who's together and who's not. Just like driver's licenses, they need that. Whenever you go get your driver's license, you're in the registry, not only of your state, but also nationwide, right? So even if you go to another state, if you happen to be pulled over by the police or something like that, they can run your name, run your registration. They can see what state you're registered in, your driving history, you know what I'm saying? And all of those things. Have you had accidents? Have you had a DUI? Have you, so you don't have to be registered in that state, but they still have access to the database of the registry of drivers. So they know if your driver's license was revoked or suspended, or you wasn't supposed to be driving, or you got a warrant. That's why they run your name and run your plate. That's why they ask for a license and registration, right? Because that's how they're going to run all the information attached to your name. This is the function of the state, right? And people will say, well, you have to get married through the state because you have to follow the law of the land. But what people aren't thinking about is there is no law that says two people can't live together and be a couple. There's no law against that. So there's no actual breaking of any law. If you don't go and get a state license, marriage license, you're not breaking any law. There's no law on the state level nor on the federal level that says two people can't decide that they love each other and want to build a family, and so they start doing that. That the state can't regulate that. Nobody's knocking door to door to figure out, you know what I'm saying? Oh, well, you in here not married. Well, somebody's going to jail because y'all know y'all not supposed to live together beyond X amount of time. without being married. The state doesn't care. The state doesn't actually care about it. They don't care about the condition of people's love life and romantic life. They don't care if your marriage is going good or bad. They don't care if you're content in your relationship or you are on the verge of breaking the relationship. Because they're going to get their slice of the pie either way. So Coach Greg Adams is actually 100% correct in this clip. In this society, spirituality, spiritual value, God has nothing to do with that state licensure. And this is not me telling people that they should or shouldn't go into the city hall or go down to the justice of the peace and register themselves with the state as a married couple. I'm not telling you you should, and I'm not telling you you shouldn't, because people are grown. People are grown. People gonna do what they're gonna do. They see it the way they see it. And a lot of times you can't really change their mind anyway. So that's not really what I'm trying to do. However, whether your mind is changed about it or not, you need to understand the reality of it though. Because the reason why one of the reasons why marriage is so devalued is because of the meddling of the state. Because if the state wasn't involved in the divorce proceedings specifically, and the child support and they call it family court, but this is not a court to try to keep families together. This is a court to regulate what happens with the family in terms of finances. How much can the state get out of these people now? That's what child support is about. Child support is not about supporting the children at all. It is about the state still being able to get a portion of that household, whether that household is together or broken. That's what that's about. Because when they garnish that man's wages to pay child support, the state is getting quite a large percentage of that and only giving the mother a certain percentage of it. So the check that she gets is not the amount that was actually paid. So let's say she gets $400 for a kid a month. He probably paid about 7 or 8. And the state took off. They clipped from the top and gave her the rest of it. So they're going to make their money. That's what this is about. Whether you consider marriage to not be valid unless the state is involved, that's on you to figure out why you think that or why you're so convinced about it. But I'm here to tell you, whether you go and get that paper or not, that's not the marriage. The marriage is actually the spiritual part of it. The marriage is always the spiritual part of it. Because before the paper is involved, what happens before the paper? The man does what? Decides in his heart that he's married to you or wants to be. And then he does what? Proposes to you. And then it's up to you to accept it as a woman. If you accept that proposal, then essentially that right there, that's the intent of the marriage. When you go before the religious institution, when you go into your church or you go into your masjid or you go into your synagogue or you go wherever it is that you go for the spiritual ceremony, that actually is the marriage. Because is you marrying under God or you marrying under the state? Who's the authority of your marriage? And that's where that conversation comes in at. See, CGA is not saying all of that in this clip, but I'm saying it. Because who's the authority over your marriage? God or the state? And this is why a lot of times when people's marriage is in trouble and they try to go to the pastor's advice is actually interesting and foreign to them, because they did not base the marriage. They didn't give the authority of the marriage to the creator in the first place. They gave it to the state. And that concept is now very foreign in American society. In a lot of people's minds, marriage is not marriage unless the state said you are married. What God say don't matter. It is irrelevant in a lot of people's lives, even those who would deem themselves religious. In a lot of people's lives, that marriage don't mean nothing if that state license ain't there. Nothing. And this is why so many people's marriages falling apart. Because the authority and the principle upon which it was based was based on an institution that don't care either way. Your marriage is neither here nor there for them. They don't care if you make it or not. They don't care if you're devastated after a divorce. They don't care if you get drugged through the court. They hoping you get drugged through the court. That's money for them, revenue. Talking about. That's why they made the laws the way they made them. The divorce laws are not fair in most cases. And even if on the letter of the law it's supposed to be impartial, the way that it's enforced is not fair. Because how many times do they charge up the female for the child support? You understand what I'm saying? We may or may not have to talk about this a little bit deeper, but he was right. He's right. And people wonder why marriage in and of itself is in the condition it's in. Look who we gave the power to over it. A whole set of institutions that ain't never looked out for us. Jump down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe to the channel if you have not. Once again, I'm your hostess, The Crimson Cure, and this was my perspective. Bye-bye, Crimsonites.